what to expect when going to inpatient treatment. Welcome to the Voluntary Admission podcast. In the clinical world, a voluntary admission is just paperwork, but in real life, it's the bravest moment of your life. It's the moment you choose to stop hiding, drop the weight of pretending you're okay, and say, I need help. But navigating the mental health system to actually get that help can feel incredibly overwhelming. That's why this show is here. My name is Ali, and I am pulling back the curtain on the behavioral health industry to make sense of it all, so everyone can get the care that they need and we can improve care for all. Welcome. Welcome to Voluntary Admission. My name is Ali, and I'm so excited to be speaking to you today about what to expect when going to inpatient treatment, whether you're seeking treatment for an eating disorder, separate facility, severe mental health, separate facility, or addiction problems, substance use problems, separate facility. A lot of these programs are set up in a very similar way, and a huge barrier to treatment from a lot of people, and I know this from talking to so many people, I know this from my personal experience before I was seeking treatment, is that there's so much mystery. You don't know what the program is going to be. It's scary. You don't know if you're going to be in an insane asylum or in a psych ward. What's going on? So I'm going to be talking about a specific kind of program where it's not based in a hospital. It's based on you going to a actual house, which looks like a residential house, but inside it is not used for just living. It is used for treatment. So let's get started. Basically, inpatient treatment, I should give a background on it. It's usually one of the highest level of care that is below literally being detained and forced to be somewhere. This is voluntary admission. And so that's actually kind of what the podcast name is inspired by. But yeah, it's voluntary admission. You will be living somewhere essentially for usually 30 days or more, depending on what your insurance covers. Usually programs are 30 to 90 days. Most people choose to leave after 30 days because they just get tired of being in the facility, but also if your insurance probably won't cover more than that unless you can pay out of pocket, which the price for these programs are enormous, but most of them are covered to a certain extent by insurance, but some may still have a copay. And I'm not going to get into insurance today. I actually don't know even a lot about it. But yeah, insurance covers a lot of these programs. There could be a copay. And so you're living there for 30 days. So let me walk you through the process from beginning to end. So when you're seeking these programs, you may be referred by a therapist, you may be referred by a doctor, maybe some other kind of provider, or you may be seeking treatment for yourself. You may have gotten to a point where you're like, my issues have really harmed my life and taken over, and I've lost control. I'm scared, and it takes a lot of courage to actually reach out for help. So I really commend you for even, seeking treatment services. And if you're just tuning into this video to help others or just curious, I'm still glad that you're watching this video because there's way too much mystery. The mystery is the biggest barrier to treatment for many people because they may have the insurance, they may even have a good support system, but just the fear of like, where am I going to go? So let's start off when you are first going to the websites. Usually you cannot just call up these places and find information. Unfortunately, I don't like the way this is set up. I don't like this part of the process at all where you're putting in a form and then someone calls you. It's like a form you're putting out into the freaking galaxy of God knows what, and someone will call you back within a day. Some places call you back immediately. They have just these admissions counselors like ready to go if someone puts in an inquiry, but you'll be called back usually within a day, usually within a few hours at most, but maybe within minutes. The process for all these facilities is very similar. Of course, every facility is different, but I'm just want to go over a large overview, a sequence, so you understand kind of what to expect. When the person calls you back, they are going to ask you, what are your issues? Like, why are you seeking treatment? How long have your problems been going on? Also collect insurance information. And then if they determine that you qualify for the program and that your insurance is accepted, then they will tell you your copay. They'll also invite you to an intake, a formal intake that usually will happen over the phone, because even some people can go to a program in a different state or even just far away from where they live. During this intake, it'll be more thorough. They ask the basic questions during the initial phone call, and this is going to be getting more information about your history before you actually admit into the program. When you arrive your first day at the program, whether you're going for drug addiction rehab, alcohol addiction rehab, eating disorder treatment, severe mental health treatment, or co-occurring, which is mental health and addiction combined, well, people who are dealing with those two issues, not like mental health patients and addiction patients, they're separate, but yeah, so co-occurring is if you have both an addiction issue and a mental health issue, you'll be with other addicts. And so your first day, you arrive, and one of the first things they'll do is actually take your stuff so they can search it. I know that sounded kind of aggressive, the way that I said it. They're going to take your stuff. They're going to ask for your belongings, and you're going to go to a separate room where they'll do an intake, a formal intake. When they take your stuff, what they're doing is they're searching it for anything that could be harmful to you or other patients in the facility. Anything like that, any substances, whether or not you're doing substance use treatment or not, they're going to check for all of those things. They're going to take any medication you brought with you, even if it's for medical or psychiatric issues. They're going to take that from you. They're also going to take vitamins and supplements. I was surprised by that, but I guess it's could be something that can harm you, or they want to monitor it. So they'll take all that stuff. They may wash your clothes and anything that you brought with you, if you brought a blanket or anything like that, because they say they don't want to bring bed bugs into the facility. So they may wash your stuff. And while they're searching your belongings, a staff member, like a behavioral health tech, someone will, maybe the nurse or someone else will do your formal intake. So you're going to sign a bunch of forms. You're going to sign, one of the forms is your voluntary admission and in your informed consent. Informed consent just means like you know what you're doing. They'll have you sign a bunch of forms. And this is the part also that I don't like, because if I'm at my wit's end, or if I'm in a desperate situation, if my mind is just slowly slipping away, I'll just make this point short. These forms better not hold up in court. They should do with actually the County of Orange in California has implemented something called a reorientation, where they say like, hey, initially when these clients walked in here and they signed all these forms, they may not have been in their right mind. So we need to reorient them. All facilities need to do this. That's county insurance, so that government insurance. So these private insurance companies need to implement that too. Forms you sign at intake better not hold up in nothing unless they revisit it again in a few days when your mind clears up. But anyways, you're going to sign a lot of forms, usually electronically. You're going to put your signature in. After you do that, then you'll meet with another person who you're going to do another intake. You're kind of going to answer the questions you already asked during your phone intake, but they're going to ask them in person. You might take a drug test depending on the facility. Usually, if you're seeking substance use treatment, you might take a drug test specifically to address addiction. The first 2 to 3 days will be detox, where you'll just have time to get your body adjusted to not having the substances in your body. For those who don't know what detox is, it's just pretty much a set time for, all that stuff to get out of your system and for you to clear your mind and all of that. And if you don't know, some people have some very severe reactions in terms of detoxing depending on what substance they're using. Some substances can lead to really severe symptoms, and it just depends on the person. So the first 2 to 3 days are reserved for detox, and that's where you won't be required to participate in the treatment activities. You can, and from what I've seen, most people end up participating, maybe not in all of them, but because you get bored just sitting in the house. And so those first 2 to 3 days, if you're seeking, again, substance use treatment, that's detox. But how's the program set up? Basically, all these programs are based on group therapy, group treatment, group counseling, depending whether it's group counseling or considered group therapy. It depends on who's running it, whether or not they have a master's degree. And basically, the groups are to help you develop coping skills, to help you talk about things that have gone on in your life, to help you build resilience for the future. You'll cover topics, maybe talking about grief, maybe talking about trauma, things like that. You're going to go through all these topics, and it's designed to give a space for you to express and process a lot of things that have gone on in your life and talk about kind of what led you into treatment in the first place. In addition to the groups, there's also activities. So you may have a fitness trainer that comes in, and there's mandatory groups and then there's optional activities. So for example, maybe a fitness trainer comes in, maybe an art therapist comes in, maybe someone comes in doing a sound bath or yoga. You can choose to participate in these activities or not. They're not mandatory. They're just designed to for holistic healing and to make the program more interesting and to also give you some other tools for wellness. I think one of my favorite activities was the art therapist who came in once a week, and we just did different activities, and it was just fun. That's something that you may do. Some programs have gym memberships, or not gym memberships, well, like some relationship with the gym where you can go there maybe a few times a week and work out instead. When it comes to the food, because this was a big concern for me, I'm so desperate, like, it doesn't matter, we'll just see when I get there. That's how desperate I was, because I'm a planner. And for there to have not been any information about most of these programs, for me to actually just say blindly go, that's how you know I was bad. And that's the other thing. A lot of these programs don't have reviews or any information. It's just very, very sketchy. It appears sketchy. But anyways, when it comes to food, there are a few ways that programs tackle food, and it just depends on the program. So one of them is they might order meal prep services for like catering for lunch and dinner, and then breakfast you can make it yourself. And in those facilities, usually every week they'll get groceries. So everyone who's in the house, they will write what they want on the grocery list. They'll get whatever you want pretty much. And most people, you would think some people would take advantage of this, but most people, like, I've never really seen people taking advantage, even though it ain't free, because do you know how much these programs cost? Oof. Yeah. Insurance covers them for the most part, but what they bill insurance is insane. It's just inflation is insane. But anyways, you put whatever you want on the grocery list. I put strawberry cake and I think like vanilla icing. What are those ice cream cookies, like the chocolate chip ice cream cookies? A lot of people put eggs and their favorite cereal, whatever you want for snacks and to eat for breakfast. So that's the first way. So catering or meal prep services for lunch and dinner. Then there are facilities that you just cook all the food and, you know, residents there who are better cooks may cook for others, but you guys will also use a grocery list and they'll just get whatever you want. So they might Instacart it, or one of the staff members might just go to the grocery store and get it. And then some facilities have a private chef. So a chef that will do meals for lunch and for dinner. I don't want to tell you guys about the chef at my facility, because when I started working in residential treatment, I was expecting the chefs to be like, or the food to be set up how ours was set up. That food was good, not gonna lie. That was one of the highlights of the program, but this was like fine dining. It was on another level. I was at one facility where there was a chef, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're gonna get some, because the staff can eat the food too. So I'm like, okay, nice. We get lunch, and this person's food, it was mostly misses. There's some okay things and a couple hits, but that was a miss. There may be a chef that's cooking lunch and dinner, like I said, and then you will cook your own breakfast, or you can, whatever you like to eat for breakfast, or a staff member might cook breakfast. Sometimes other residents, again, who like to cook will cook for the other people in the house. Yeah, that's how food is set up. Let's talk about who's in the house. So usually these programs only house 6 to 8 people. It's usually a 2-story house. That's a big house, and they're usually pretty nice. There's some that are super fancy, like where I went to, which, by the way, I'm not going to reveal the program. Sorry, I'm not. But yeah, there's some that are super fancy. In California, we have programs on the beach that are close to the beach. So they'll have that like on their website, like a beach view, steps away from the beach. There's some programs that are literally on the beach. These programs house 6 to 8 people usually. And in terms of the rooms, some facilities, every person gets their own room depending on how many bedrooms there are. But say if they only have 4 bedrooms and there's 6 people, then obviously someone's going to have to share. But you'll never, usually, I don't want to say you'll never, because I'm thinking of a program right now, but that program's crazy. I've heard so many stories from clients. But anyways, you'll usually not have more than 2 people in your room. And ask about that before you go if that's a big thing for you. But don't let that be a barrier, but just ask about that. Usually not more than 1 person, and pretty spacious, multiple bathrooms. Yeah, there's one facility that I worked at recently, actually, beautiful. Won't reveal where it was, but everyone pretty much had their own bathroom and room, and super nice. So 6 to 8 residents. And when it comes to men and women, some facilities are co-ed and some are single gender. You just have to ask about that. I know I was very young when I went, so I couldn't even have imagined going with men. Not for any, I was just very uncomfortable. I didn't want that. And I think they asked me, I don't know, my mother probably told them, but I remember saying I do not want to be with guys. So make sure to ask about that too. There are single gender facilities. In terms of the programming in rehabs and addiction rehabs, they wake y'all up at like 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. Now, I don't agree with that. Their whole point is like, you've been kind of messing up. Let's get you up early and focused on treatment. I have very mixed feelings about that. I get the thought process behind it, but I have mixed feelings. So they'll wake you up at like 6, maybe 6:30, and you'll do something. This is very specific to addiction treatment. Morning meditation or daily devotion, daily affirmation, something like that. Each facility is a little bit different, where you'll essentially set your intention for the day. A staff member will facilitate that. So it's your shortest group for the day. It's probably about 30 minutes. And the whole purpose, again, setting your intention for the day. They may go over a quote. They may talk about your goals, stuff like that. It's just to kind of get ready for the day. I would wake you guys up maybe at like 7:30 so that you could 7:30 to 8 so you get to your first group at 9. That gives you enough time to get ready, to eat, to rest, to read, whatever you want to do, write in your journal. But yeah, they wake y'all up early. Sorry. For other forms of treatment or other people seeking treatment, mental health services, or for eating disorders, they'll probably wake you up at like 7:30 to 8 so you can go to your first group at 9. So how do groups work? Groups usually last between an hour to hour and a half. Some groups are 2 hours, but you'll have a break in between, and you'll have like maybe 4 groups a day. And this is again in residential inpatient treatment, 4 mandatory groups per day. And then when it comes to the evenings, that's like really your downtime. So you'll have like a lunch break, and then you'll have dinner, and then your downtime. But for addiction treatment specifically, in the evenings, they usually go to meetings, so AA meetings or NA meetings, which are just sober support meetings. And if you watching this and you're not familiar with addiction recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous meetings, they'll go to those in the evenings. But for the other folks, that's your downtime. Let me talk about phones and electronics. So when it comes to addiction treatment, y'all cannot have your phones. you can't. And that's because of, just going through recovery, it's so important to totally be focused and also not have any meaningful connections to the outside world, so you could just stay focused. And when those crazy thoughts start to get in your head, that I'm not blaming you for, but those crazy thoughts will start to get in your head. And so it's really important, just for your protection of your sobriety, that you have very limited phone access. So during detox, the first 2 to 3 days of treatment, many facilities will put you on a blackout, meaning that you can't access your phones at all. You're there voluntarily, so if you want to take your phone and leave, you can, but just go through the first 2 to 3 days without a phone. If there's like an emergency, your family needs to contact you, they can contact the facility. So it's not like you can't speak to anyone ever. If they need to contact you for some reason, they may allow that. Like if it's an emergency, they're absolutely going to let them. If they just want to speak to you, the first 2 to 3 days are a blackout where you cannot access your personal telephone. And then for addiction treatment, again, specifically, there are 2 times of day where phones are allowed, usually for maybe like an hour. And you could also use your iPad or your laptop during that time, maybe even less depending on the facility. I've recently heard of a facility, and I've heard great things about it, residential treatment, where they don't let you have your phone at all for the 30 days. And all the clients I spoke to were complaining about that, even though they said the program was great. But usually there are just dedicated times in the day where you can use your phone. For other folks, mental health, eating disorders, other things, you pretty much have access to your phone the whole time. They will just ask you, of course, you're not supposed to be using it during groups, and that's pretty much it. Phones, laptops, you'll have access to that. Let's talk about bedtime. This is actually something I didn't really think about, but bedtime, 10 o'clock, I'll say quiet time, because you don't have to go to bed, but where you have to be in your room, not, clanging dishes in the kitchen, probably like 10. Also, there tends to be a TV in the living room. Many facilities, now that's the only thing. I've seen some facilities, they don't have TVs in the rooms, so you might want to ask about that too. But yeah, if you want to just chill in your room, I would bring your laptop and your headphones so that you can watch your shows and YouTube. And then, because if people, that's one of the things, there's always someone hogging the TV. Like, one of the archetypes that is consistent in residential treatment is there's always that one person who just wants to hog the TV. So there'll be a TV in the living room. Some facilities have pools, which no matter where I've worked, or even I was hearing this when I was seeking treatment, people usually don't use the pool. They may use it the first few days. And a lot of places have pools, but they don't have a jacuzzi. So I think if places that have jacuzzis, a lot of people will be using that because that's a little bit different. But yeah, there may be a backyard and whatnot. Let's talk about outings. Once a week on Saturdays, usually, you guys can go to outings. You guys can vote on them. You can go to the beach if you guys are near a beach. Go-kart riding, bowling, that's usually the kinds of things that people do. May go out to a restaurant and eat frozen yogurt, and it just feels so good to get out of the house because it does start to feel like jail. Even if you're mostly having a good experience, it does start to feel kind of like jail. And I've never been to jail, but I'm stuck. And it really started to feel like jail when I started having issues at the facility. I had an overwhelmingly good experience. I was lucky in that regard. Very, very lucky. But some of the staff started to act immature and do weird stuff. And I was just like, I was updating my mom every single day about things going on there. And she was like, yeah, just, keep pushing. You're almost done. And so I wanted to finish my 30 days. So I stayed, but it's just, I started to get so irritated, and I kind of feel sad about that whole situation, the situations, because I went to stay a little bit longer in all honesty, but I was like, let me get out of here. Time to go. Those outings, even if it was to Target, meant a lot. Your family, they can visit you. And, some people are going to treatment out of state, so they also can visit you if they can afford to. But once a week, your family can come. If you're in addiction treatment, you cannot go off site. Your family can come, but you cannot go off site. In other treatment facilities, you actually can go off site depending on the facility, but you can go out for limited hours and they have to know where you're going as well. And yeah, you can go to wherever you want, go eating. I know with my mother, she came every single week. I remember one day we went to just Ross, or we went to breakfast, and yeah, just stuff like that. That's usually on Saturdays or Sundays, so that's the weekend. And depending on the program, there may not be programming on Sundays. So in terms of the groups, that may be a free day. Maybe there might be one group, but some facilities, they still program on Sundays. Maybe it's just a little more lax. I recently was going to a facility on Sundays just to do a group, and I loved it so much. Just showing up on the Sunday, there was a different kind of vibe, and loved the groups. Kind of miss doing that. I might go back. Okay, actually, let me talk about the staff. Who is there? Oh, now there's a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't cover. So let's talk about medication. Your first few days there, you have to get a physical exam. So they will take you to get a physical exam. You might even have to get blood work. So they'll either have a phlebotomist come to the house to draw your blood, or you will get it done outside of the house at some sort of office. They'll draw your blood. You'll go to a place where they'll do a full physical exam. And like I said in the beginning, they take your medications when you first get there. Let's talk about how medication administration works. First of all, if you need medications for any medical issues, then you can take that every single day, but a staff member who's a behavioral health tech will administer it. So you cannot have access to your medications. They are locked up, and during the scheduled times when you need them, your staff member will take your vitals. So they will take your blood pressure, your oxygen. I'm putting up my finger because they'll take your oxygen. I think that's actually it. And then they give you your medication. They pour it into a cup and they give you however many pills you need. That's what they give you. If you need one, they give you one. If you need two, they give you two. They watch you take it. They have to watch you take it. That's the only thing that feels like, okay, whatever. But I know they have to do that to protect themselves or whatever. Make sure people are safe. So they'll do that. And even if you take supplements like, I don't know, fish oil, they'll administer that to you as well. And yeah, that's the medication. And when it comes to the psychiatrist, so you'll see a psychiatrist or another provider who is licensed to be able to provide medications, such as a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. When you first get there, The first 1 to 2 days, you'll usually see a provider like a psychiatrist, a NP, a PA, they'll do an assessment and they might administer you some new or they might prescribe you some new medication, or they'll ask you what you're currently on. They may take you off of it or they may adjust it. After that, once a week, you'll see the provider to make adjustments to your medications if needed. Let's talk about the staff who are on site. So this is a 24-hour operation. You're there for 30 days. People are coming in and out of the facility. New clients are coming every few weeks, and people are leaving. That's what I mean. But there's usually 3 shifts. So morning shift, swing shift, which is, evening shift, and overnight shift. So that's 3 sets of people that you're going to be seeing, and you're going to be asleep during overnight shift. So you probably won't get to know those people. But yeah, so the staff who are there, there's going to be at least one therapist who you'll meet with weekly. Programs really need to be having them meet with them at least twice a week. I think that will make the programs feel like they're more worth it. But you'll meet with them at least once a week. The therapist. There may be a nurse on staff depending on the facility, a nurse there, and you'll have a case manager. All the clients will go to whatever case manager they're assigned to. The case manager, their role is to anything with insurance and just helping you get through the program, doing all the behind the scenes paperwork and all that kind of stuff. They're also responsible for your discharge planning, which I'll talk about that in a minute. The other staff that are there are behavioral health techs / mental health workers. They may be called something different depending on where you are. Let's talk about who facilitates the groups as well. Some facilities, they do a mix, but I'll tell you who may be facilitating the groups. So your therapist will probably facilitate a few groups a week, maybe 1 to 3 groups a week. The staff will facilitate groups. So in addiction treatment, there are alcohol and drug technicians and then certified alcohol and drug counselors who facilitate the groups. Your case manager might do a group, your nurse might do a group. So different people do groups. They're not all good, but the cool part about groups is they don't have to be that great for it to be a good group. It's all about the people in the group, your peers and the other residents in the facility, that you guys could just get carried away in there and just connect with those folks. Some facilities outsource groups, so they only have independent facilitators come and facilitate groups, which I've done independent group facilitation. I actually loved it depending on where I was working, but I think that's cool because they get this really fresh perspective. So the staff members will facilitate some groups, but then these other people will come in and it's like, ooh, who's this? And of course I come in and bring in my energy, and it's just a complete change of pace. And that's how I know I'm a good facilitator, because first of all, I've been through treatment. I've been working in treatment. I know a lot of people's groups are just boring. And I come in with my energy. So some places you'll have these facilitators coming in and out a few per week. Other places, and then the facilitators are different kinds of professionals. Well, there may be a therapist who comes in, maybe a counselor, maybe someone else that is a behavioral health provider. But like I said, they have activities. So they may have a fitness trainer come in, and those are optional groups. Fitness trainer. My program had a dietitian coming in once a week. They may have a sound bath. They may have acupuncture, whatever. These are things you can choose to participate in if you want to. Yeah, I think that is all for groups. Let's talk about discharge planning. When it comes to discharge planning, a lot of facilities really fall short with this, but this is pretty much, okay, after you leave treatment, in 30 days, you're not fixed, okay? I don't believe anyone really gets fixed, but you get well. You need to continue your treatment, and so good facilities, even the facility I was at, totally fell short with this, but anyways, who's the therapist that you're going to be seeing? They should be linking you up with that. What about outpatient? What about PHP? PHP is partial hospitalization. We'll talk about those in a different video, but I'll briefly talk about intensive outpatient. Intensive outpatient, just a way to continue your treatment, but basically it's wherever you live, you go back home, and IOP, intensive outpatient, is where you go to the facility a few times a week for treatment, but you're at home and you're doing your normal stuff again. Maybe you're working, going to school, or maybe, you're just at home, but you go to the facility and you go back home. So that's intensive outpatient. That's available for all these kinds of treatments: eating disorders, mental health, addiction treatment. They all have intensive outpatient programs. PHP, partial hospitalization, is where you live at a house with other people who are doing treatment, but you're not doing treatment at the house. You guys are just all living there, and you go to a facility for a few hours a day, and then you come back home with the residents. There's more freedom in that sense. You guys all live in a house that is not like a treatment facility. You guys don't really program at home, but there are rules, there are guidelines and boundaries there. And you guys all go to the facility a few hours a day, and then you come back home. So that is discharge planning. I want to talk about what happens if you want to leave early from the facility. If it's not working out, you feel uncomfortable or whatever, that's called leaving early. Is something called leaving AMA, which is against medical advice. And I don't like that it's presented that way, because people leave for all kinds of reasons. And I feel like when they label it as that, they make it seem like that person, they were going against what our recommendations were, and there's all kinds of reasons that people leave. But when it's against medical advice, pretty much it's just leaving early. They won't give you your medication. So that's one thing to be aware of. If you leave AMA, they will not give you your medications, because their reasoning is you're leaving against medical advice, and to protect themselves, they don't want to give you medications, because what if you go out and hurt yourself with these medications, or a dangerous situation happens? So that's something to be aware of. But this is at will. You're voluntarily admitting yourself, so you can leave whenever you want. You can take your stuff. You don't have to sign paperwork before you leave if you don't want to. You don't have to. Either way, like I don't like that whole aspect of treatment. They need to figure out something better with that, because most people are not just running out of the facility in the middle of the night. People leave for all kinds of reasons, and it usually has to do with staff or maybe other residents, but a lot of times it's staff, just weird things that they're doing. That's what I've seen consistently from my experience, from working with others, from hearing so many stories. It's just like the staff, people in the world are weird, and sometimes you'll get people with an attitude, or who maybe have a power trip, or maybe I don't know, maybe just something odd is going on and you want to leave. Usually what I've seen is that it's kind of that thing. It's not usually something like really, really crazy happening. It's just, and it may be crazy, but it's not being unsafe is not what I've seen. Of course there are these horror stories, but a lot of times, people just be on some BS and they feel justified because they're in their staff, So that's leaving AMA. If you're discharging at the time you are scheduled to, you'll do some paperwork and they'll type in what your discharge plan is, but facilities need to do better with that in terms of discharge planning, making sure you have all the resources that you need. I want to talk about the other residents. Are you going to be with a bunch of scary people, or like what is it going to be? And a lot of it depends on the facility, but these are normal people. These are people that if you saw them out on the street, you wouldn't know that they had an issue with, whether it's mental health, eating disorders, drugs. Like, you wouldn't know. You really wouldn't know. It's just because it's just everyday normal people just seeking treatment, and you guys are all in the same boat. Sometimes, especially in addiction treatment, people are coming off drugs and alcohol, so they'll be irritable in the beginning, but you meet a lot of great people, amazing people, very close connections. But then some of them you may not get close to at all, or maybe you don't have a strong bond with them. Yeah, these are just normal people. Sometimes you'll get your characters here and there, but I don't think that's something to fear. You're not going to an asylum. You're not going to a psych ward. You're going to a home for people to get well, and it's really just normal people. Yeah, you'll come across characters, maybe people who are complaining about weird stuff, or maybe people who are picking fights with staff. But then a lot of those people, after maybe the first week, they settle down and start doing a little bit better. There are maybe activities that you can do there, besides stuff like you can make bracelets if you want to. I still have the jewelry that I made from treatment. One of the things recently broke, which I don't know if that's symbolic, not in a bad way, but I can't believe it broke. I have pictures of it. Someone there made me a necklace. You can do arts and crafts if you want to do, you can color. It's really, you have a lot of downtime. Even though it sounds like you're programming the whole time, you have a lot of downtime, and that's why people get bored. Okay, there's actually one thing I do want to talk about, which is gaining weight. So like I said, you could order whatever you want from the store, or you put it on a grocery list, they'll get it or they'll order it. If you have money, which I didn't have any money, you can DoorDash, and some people do that, but you're not moving. So you're very sedentary. You can go on walks, not by yourself though, escorted by a staff. And some facilities, of course, you could work out in your room or you could work out outside. Some facilities have gym membership. Yeah, you could go to the gym, but you're sedentary most of the time. And what do you do when you get bored? What do a lot of people do? They just eat, and you're probably eating more junk maybe than you usually eat. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you already eat junk, but you're just moving so much less because you're not going up and going to work or school or to the grocery store. You're just so sedentary, and a lot of people gain weight, and depending on how long you're there, the more weight that you'll probably gain. That's not something I want you to be concerned about. Maybe try to get healthier snacks and try to, go on daily walks, working out. That should be the least of your concerns, because you're focused on getting well. So if you gain some weight, that just comes with, the whole, the equation of input versus output. You're inputting a lot of food and you're not moving much. I've heard of people gaining an extreme amount of weight, but that was because they stayed for like 60 to 90 days. But if you're just staying for 30 days, probably gain 10 to 15 pounds maybe, depending. Okay, I covered a lot in this video. If you have any questions, I am going to be posting this on YouTube. So if you're listening somewhere else, you could go to YouTube to episode 1 and ask any questions in the comments. If there's a question that you have that you don't feel comfortable sharing with everyone, and of course I'm going to respond, but that you just want to keep private, you can email me. I'll have my contact information in the description and the show notes as well. I hope this was helpful. I really hope this gives you more confidence and courage if this is the kind of treatment that you need to seek, or if you've been referred to treatment and you just cannot really find, very candid information. And if I missed anything, again, ask questions. But thank you guys so much for listening to the first episode of Voluntary Admission. All right, peace.